What is going on, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Pacers, guys, the Indiana Pacers have finally made some draft selections here on day 2. They had 3 selections in total in the 2024 NBA draft, all, of course, on day 2. And those picks were pick 36, pick 49, and pick 50. So the Pacers have picked 3 players, 3 guys that they add to their roster, and they are as follows: Johnny Furphy, Tristen Newton, and Enrique Freeman to round it out. So, Derek, let's start here by starting with the first pick that the Indiana Pacers made. Actually, they made a trade up 1 pick to acquire this guy and confuse like everybody because they traded with the Spurs. They gave some cash considerations. They traded up 1 pick. And so people were super confused. I know when we even initially, started recording this, you're like, wait a minute, did the Pacers get him or not? Because people were just so confused on like what happened there for whatever reason. But the Pacers do end up with him here, Furphy, out at pick number 35. He's a wing player out of Kansas. And Derek, last season, he averaged 9 points and 4.9 rebounds per game in his 1 year at Kansas. He was 64.2 shots, so he's pretty accurate shooting the basketball. But Derek, he is still a very young player as well. He's only 19 years old. So talk to me about Johnny Furphy. We talked about the Pacers needing, continuing to need a wing. So talk to me about Furphy here and what he could potentially provide for Indiana, a team that's still looking for that potential future wing guy.
Definitely a very interesting pick here. You look at I think you see it and you look more at the potential of a player like this because, if you look at the intangibles, 6'8", and for someone that was a shooting guard in college, that's pretty insane. That's a really great size for someone as a shooting guard, but one of the downsides to that size is, he's not a extremely well-built player right now. Which is not overall a terrible thing. He is only 19 years old. His body is still kind of growing. So, but he's only 190. So, it's not a great playing weight for someone at that size, especially if some of these shooting guards that you get that are, plus 200 pounds that can back you down and can do things like that. That's definitely going to be a concern if you're someone like Johnny Furphy going forward. But again, let's be realistic. The Pacers brought this guy in for a backup role and for somebody that, can provide some spacing on that second level. Someone that can shoot an occasional 3 from outside, someone that has the size that can handle some of these mismatches when maybe even potentially when teams go big and somebody's trying to get a little bit of extra size. Johnny Furphy can be that answer. It'll definitely be interesting to see what he has because he has mainly just been a backup guy. He's not really been he has had a few times where he's gone in and been a starter for Kansas, but he's never really been a full-time starter for Kansas. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what he does because only averaged 9 a game. He only gets about 5 rebounds and maybe an assist per game. He does get a steal once per game. So, overall, it's not terrible when you're looking at the overall numbers. Does shoot 35% from 3, shot 47% from the floor. Free throw percentage a little less to be desired there. But like we said, the intangibles with Johnny Furphy is what you're looking at here, and that's probably why they fell in love with him here.
Yeah, and again, he was only a freshman last year at Kansas, so he started out not really getting a lot of minutes, right? He averaged just a hair under 14 minutes per game through the first 15 games of the season, but with some injuries for Kansas and some other things, Furphy got more of a role and kind of stepped and started to get more of a workload, and he really capitalized, Derek, with that. And yeah, I thought he played really, really good basketball when he got the opportunity last year with the Jayhawks. And so he's a guy that definitely, even though he didn't get like a crazy amount of minutes, right? I think he showed some really, really good things. I mean, there's a lot of people that are saying this is one of the best picks of this draft, right? Value wise, people are saying, he was a top 25 player. Like, I heard people saying stuff like that. And the good thing is, like you mentioned, Furphy's definitely got some size. He's 6'9", 200 pounds. So he can definitely grow into that frame a little bit more. But he's definitely a guy that could maybe help you out defensively eventually, Derek. But it's not like a necessary sort of thing for Furphy where he has to step in right away and contribute, right? The Pacers can be very patient with him, and they can let him kind of develop into the player they foresee him becoming. But definitely from a potential standpoint, I mean, this guy has all the potential in the world. There's no question about that. His ceiling is very high from what experts and people are saying about that. When it comes to Johnny Furphy, which is definitely a great thing, and you talked about Derek. Just when it comes to what the Pacers are looking for, overall, like I think he just provides, like you mentioned, kind of that mismatch in a lot of different ways that, kind of that rare type of athlete that you're looking for. But he's still very raw and he still has to develop. But if the Pacers can develop him properly, I mean, I think he has all the potential in the world to do some really, really good things. So looking forward to that. Thought it was a good pick for the Pacers based off of where they were. And obviously they felt like they needed to get this kid and trade up for him. So that's always a good sign when a team trades up for a guy. And we've seen teams do that in the past when they really believe in a guy. And, the Pacers obviously believe in him enough to be willing to pull the trigger there. So really excited to see how he projects moving forward. But again, only 19 years old. So he's got some work that's going to have to be put in until he potentially gets some minutes with Indiana. But that was the first pick the Indiana Pacers had. Now moving on to their second pick number 49, the Indiana Pacers took guard out of Connecticut, Tristen Newton. So it's a very interesting journey for Tristen Newton, Derek. So just a couple different things. He was unranked coming out of high school. He started off his first 3 seasons at East Carolina. Then he transferred to UConn. He's a 2-time national champion.
Yep.
He's a Big East tournament MVP. He's a 2,000-point scorer. He's done a lot of things. He's had kind of an up and down career so far, right? But he's accomplished a lot, right? He's played in 5 seasons, but he's accomplished a lot in his collegiate career after being a guy that a lot of people just wrote off. He really has had to scratch and claw his way to this point to where he is now. And he just continues to be a really, really good player in college basketball. And so the fact the Pacers were able to get him here, a guy that was very productive in college and showed a lot of good things. What are your thoughts here on the Pacers' second pick here in Tristen Newton?
Yeah, definitely interesting. Like you said, 5 seasons in college basketball. First 3 spent with ECU. Then, like you said, 2-time national champion with UConn. So he had, that 3rd year at ECU, he really blossomed into the player that he really wanted to be. Was averaging almost 18 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists per game, having a steal and a half per game as well. Overall, with some solid shooting percentages, maybe not as good as what Furphy's was, but I mean, it was pretty close. So this is a guy that definitely can score for sure. And then obviously went to UConn, saw his numbers drop a little bit because it became more of a team environment because, with UConn, that was it's been a really good team. That's a really good program. But then, like you said, in that second year at UConn, really his numbers started to pick up a lot more, back to averaging 15 points per game, but then became a better rebounder and better at assist making as well. So was averaging 15, 6.5, and 6 for that last season, and almost and averaging a steal per game as well. And the shooting percentage is right about the same as it normally is. So, overall, Newton's numbers as an overall performance did a really great job. I saw a lot of people talking about he's got great intensity in the way that he plays, which is obviously something that you want to really strive for. But ultimately, the problem you have with him is when you're 6'3" and 190 pounds. So, I mean, he's less weight than Furphy was, but I mean, he is 6'3". So that's not insanely tall, especially for a guy that, he's going to be your backup point guard per se, and how he approaches it. But I think ultimately the Pacers made this decision because this is a guy that can go out there and get you a few buckets in that backup role, but also has the ability to get you that rebound and get you that assist because he plays with that kind of intensity. So ultimately, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what they do here, especially with the fact that he's a little bit older too. He's way older than Furphy. He's actually 23. So, I mean, you have the difference in how they approach this, right? Because Furphy is not as complete of a player as what Newton is, but he's also got a lot more of the intangibles and he's younger. So, it's very different in how you approach that sort of thing. But hey, you take a player that has done good in a winning program, that's the kind of players that you want on your team for that locker room.
Yeah, and he, especially Newton, he is a very, very elite, like closer to the basket. The big kind of knock on him has been honestly just his 3-point shooting, right? You think if that was up a little bit, he probably would have gone a lot earlier, right? So if he can fix and get better in that department, I think he could be a really good guy because, he has all those traits outside of that you're like, wow, he can consistently score from pretty much anywhere except for that 3-point line, right? So if he can kind of really focus in and hone in on that, I think that definitely will be in his favor because he can do a lot of good things from short and mid range, but when it comes to no more of those deep ones, it's a little bit more of an issue with him. Just looking at some stats here for him, Derek. I mean, overall, when you look at Newton, I mean, you really talk about at the 2 seasons he had at UConn. He only shot 34% from deep, right? So he's definitely not desirable, especially from a point guard standpoint. You definitely need him to improve in that capacity. But everywhere else in his offensive game, really, really, I think is good. And he's a very good defensive guard as well, which you'll notice that trend with these 2 picks. 2 guys that have that, capability on defense. And we know how much the Pacers need that. So definitely think if he can get a handle on that 3-point shooting and up his game in that capacity, he could be a really solid contributor off the bench because we know that he can score and we know that he can play, around the rim. So I'm very intrigued to see that. And it's cool because he can do that despite only being 6'3", right? So I'm intrigued to see kind of what that looks like and if he can improve in those ways. I mean, that would be so great to have a backup guy from the guard position that can play some really good defense. So intrigued by that. But then when you look at the final pick that the Indiana Pacers made, I mean, Derek, this is the classic take a guy later on, but a guy that has a lot of production, but came from kind of a smaller school, right? And of course, I'm talking about pick number 50, Enrique Freeman from Akron. So 6'7", Derek. He averaged 18.6 points and 12.9 rebounds last season while shooting from 58.4% from the field. So, I mean, Derek, he definitely, even though he played in, a smaller conference, smaller school in Akron, I mean, this kid was very productive in college. I mean, very productive. So talk to me about Enrique Freeman here. I don't know if I mentioned or not, but he is a forward. So talk to me about Freeman here.
And hey, listen, don't say nothing about no Akron or Mac schools, man. They got some real dudes over there that can actually play some real good ball. I know that it's typically not your highest level of competition at times, but I mean, again, they play some hard basketball over there. I honestly would argue they play harder basketball than the majority of your big time college programs out there. Some of them may be a little undersized. Some of them might even be under talented in some ways, but they play harder than all the rest of them over there. And if you're a guy at 6'7", who definitely is not the tallest person out there on the court at any given time, and you can average almost 19 and 13 on a basketball court in college, that's really good. I think what intrigues me the most, Cody, and I think the reason why they selected him, the 13 rebounds a game. Mm-hmm. I think that's what it is. Because what is the one thing that we kept saying a lot of, especially early in the year, about the Indiana Pacers? They always get out-rebounded. They always seem like they don't have a guy that's willing to go out there and get the boards. And, Enrique Freeman is exactly the guy that you want that not only can get you those boards, but again, can get you buckets. Like, I mean, we saw it. He was really good in his college career. I mean, the most games he played in 2023, 2024, and never shot under 58% from the floor. Now, obviously, his minutes kept growing as he continued to do better, but look at this, Cody. I mean, with it playing 22 minutes in 2020, 2021, his field goal percentage was 74%. In 2021, 2022, when he had 29 minutes per game, he still shot 67% from the floor. The year before last, shot 62%. And so this year shot 58.5%. So I mean, this is a guy, I know most of his buckets are underneath. But at the same time, I mean, that shows you how effective he is. I mean, this is probably the most intriguing outside of Furphy there. Enrique Freeman is definitely going to be a surprise one to me because, I mean, again, he's got a solid size, 6'7", 206. That's a relatively good size. Maybe put a few pounds on him. Maybe he can handle that. But, I mean, he plays with intensity, and you have to in order to be able to average 13 rebounds a game as a fifth-year senior. So I'm very intrigued by Enrique Freeman. I think that was a great selection for them here.
All right. Well, guys, let us know your thoughts here on the Indiana Pacers. 3 picks here in the second round. Which pick was your favorite? Which pick made you maybe scratch your head a little bit? Let us know all those things in the comments down below. But, guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, go Pacers.